What I always worry about with a lot of entrepreneurs is they constantly hear, well, you gotta just like, if you're unhappy, leave your job and start your business. It's like, whoa. Like, wait a minute.
Here comes the anti-guru again.
Right? There's a time and a place for that. And I always contrast these two. You've got the Viking approach and I call it the Spiderman approach. And the Viking approach is like, we're burning the boats at the beaches and we're storming ahead and we're going to take this city or we're going to die. It's like, well, that's okay. Sure. That's great for,
It works with some significant risk.
With some significant risk. And if you're, you just said COVID was a time for your young family, well, maybe that's not the time to burn the boats at the beach.
Yo. Welcome to Find Your Freedom, the best entrepreneurship podcast. Being an entrepreneur is hard. That's why we created findyourfreedompod.com to compile all the resources you need to find your own freedom. Be sure to join the newsletter and connect with all the entrepreneurs in our network. And today, one of those entrepreneurs is Clint. We are so excited to have you on today. Thanks so much, Clint.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm looking forward to having this conversation with the two of you. Lots of energy. Let's bring it.
Welcome to the podcast, Clint.
Yeah, man. I've been watching you on Twitter X for forever now. And I've loved watching just your growth and how you've done it over the last few months, because a lot of what you say is you're kind of the anti-guru, which is interesting because a lot of the guys on Twitter are like, follow me. I know all the secrets. I've got you all the insight no one else is telling you. And you're like, look, there's a lot of people out here telling this stuff. And you're like, I'm just going to, cut through all the bullshit. And I love that about you. Can you give us a little talk about your ride over the last year?
Yeah, it's been absolutely incredible. Like you're saying, this whole journey started in April of 2021. So I had a long-term plan to leave my employment and become an entrepreneur. I decided, messaged it to my work 10 years from now in 2018. 10 years from now, I'm going to leave. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to write, podcast, public speak, coach and consult, private equity, and real estate investing. So if you look down the list of those 5 things now, most of them are actually already underway. So it's been an absolutely incredible journey. And I write about this a lot. Know what you want, understand what it takes, do the work. So we created a plan and we've slowly been making action. I never intended to do any of that until closer to retirement. But we had COVID, all the time in the world, everything shut down. So I launched a podcast. You both know you can't grow these things. You need a way to get the message out there. So I jumped on social media, decided to start taking that seriously, August 2021. So it's been slightly over 2 years. So for everyone who thinks,
I love that,
this takes decades, this takes, I can't grow, it's dead, I can't do. You can start, you be consistent. I always say it, invest in yourself. I've taken 4 or 5 courses. I've made relationships with some great accounts. I've created networks, pods, engagement groups. And now we're on 3 platforms. Instagram grows pretty slowly. Twitter's stalling a little, but LinkedIn's just firing on all cylinders. So the best part about being on 3, guys, is when one slows down, you don't feel that bad because the other's taking off and the algos will change. But as long as you keep providing value to the audience, you're going to grow. The other thing it does is learning how to write long form content improves how you think, improves your conversational skills, and it's going to improve your writing and your leadership as an entrepreneur.
So where did you get all of this insight from? It seems kind of like you were going along, you're talking about your corporate job. So I believe you were in accounting, you work in a financial gig. How did all of this planning come along? And then all of a sudden during COVID, you have this, explosion. Can you talk us through sort of what your thought process was?
Yeah, if I look back, so I knew I was going to do all of those things because they aligned with my purpose. I'd done a lot of work on what's my purpose, what's my vision, what's my ikigai, where do I want to end up? For your listeners who don't maybe know what the ikigai is, and this will tie a little bit to the audience, to the people that are feeling a little lost. feeling a little unhappy, not sure what they want to do, right? And I think you might have fired that to me in the notes before the conversation. But what Ikigai does is it says, what do I love to do? What am I good at? What does the world need? What will people pay me for? And when we find the intersection of those things, we're going to find a spot where we can spend all day. We look like we're playing, but we're doing work. And so you're always having fun. And for me, that was all the things on that list. Like, I want to write, I want to coach, I want to consult, I want to build businesses, because that gives me energy. That gives me joy. Helping people grow personally, professionally, and financially is one of the most rewarding things I've ever had in my career. It's great to be the CFO, but the best part is seeing that young colleague who started as an accounting student.
Yep.
And now they're a controller. And on that 7-year journey, married, bought a house, had their first child. And they're on your team when they're doing all these steps on their life journey. Like, it gives me goosebumps even thinking about seeing someone go through all that and seeing that develop. And so I always knew that was the key. And I'm a little bit older. I'm 45. So when all this started, I was 43. I've always read about 30 books a year. And so when I launched the podcast was conversations with authors, which meant I started reading about 50 books a year.
Right.
And they're mostly on self-improvement. So it's like, well, where do you get the content to write about? One is, generally, you always want to come from your own lived experience, because that's the anti-guru. You have to actually have lived it. We're not talking about writing to you on how to raise your kids while I'm living in my mom's basement eating Cheetos in a beanbag chair.
Right.
Like, that's not what's happening. So life experience, the books I read, the content I consume, that was all something that I said, hey, I think I've figured some things out in reality, mostly in the last 15 years. When I first from the moment I signed up and completed my first Ironman, going through work with cognitive behavioral therapy to work on my thinking processes, going through men's group and working on shadow work and internal analysis, that's all been a journey over the last 15 years. And I realize if I can package that in some writing and talk people through some of the biggest changes in my life that have led to the improvements that I've seen, why not share that with the world?
Right. That's huge. All right. So you've covered some of the things, but I just want to make sure our audience sort of understands what the last 10 years of your life have looked like. So I went through all the research I could do to try and find out everything about you. So you were a CFO, you've written a novel, launched a podcast, finished an Ironman, ran an ultra marathon, which my business partner does, which is those 50, 100-mile races through the mountains, which is ridiculous. You read 50 plus books a year. You're a multimillionaire. You need to update your website. It says 250,000 plus followers on Twitter. It's actually 350 plus thousand followers on Twitter. You built a $10 million real estate portfolio, and you're coaching and developing people on finance and financial literacy and living a good life. Is that most of what we need to cover here?
Yeah, there's a couple other things that are on the go that aren't published yet, but when we talk in a year, it's going to be incredible listing them all. So that's largely the list right there. Yes, and I'm a father to two amazing young boys. They're 15 and 12 years old. I coach my youngest son's hockey team, so I'm the head coach on that. We're starting the season right now.
It's very Canadian of you. I love that.
Yeah, got it. The older boy plays football, and even though we're in Canada, it's American rules, so 4 downs.
I love it,
and love watching him. I can't coach him; he's already bigger, stronger, faster than me. So that's over.
That is so good.
So you began that list, by the way, Jonathan. You put together a badass list of this man's accomplishments. So first of all, thanks again for coming on.
I feel cool just saying that list.
Yeah, that's really something. Blew me away. Let's all take that in for a second. So CPA, was that the beginning? That's where the career journey started?
Yeah, back then it was in Canada, it was the CA designation. And then we had 2 other ones. And then probably about a decade in, they merged them all and called them the CPA. But what that was, it was a decade off and on at KPMG. So that's where I did my articling. That's where I met most of my closest friends in life. And that's where I learned, I always look at it as a paid MBA, because you're going from business to business to business doing an audit. You have to understand the business, be able to audit it, hand in your work, and then go to the next job, sometimes in as little as 3 weeks. So what I felt was I'd always been pretty decent at learning, but articling at a Big Four firm really accelerated that skill set of learning how to learn. So going from 0 to 100 very quickly, and then going to another thing. And so if there's any skill that I would say has driven most of my life, it has been that I learn very, very quickly.
Yeah. I would think you would have to achieve all these things that you've done already on your journey. So all the CPA background, the director and exec level positions that you've been in, was the Growth Guide podcast, was that your first foray into entrepreneurship?
For sure, yes. Largely because when you're in these roles, they're so time consuming that they suck up all your time. And then outside of them, what I realized after COVID, so if we go back before COVID, on the weekends you're visiting friends, you're having drinks, you're going to your in-laws' place, you're going to your parents' place, you're going to your kids' sports activities, you're sitting there and watching them practice for 2 hours. It just sucks up all your time. Like, there's no free time as a parent. And then what COVID really, really highlighted was how much of that time is inefficient, and how little we were choosing, not everybody, but most of us, how little we were choosing how we wanted to live with intention. Mm-hmm. So we were missing intentionality because you just went through the motions. Well, this is what I do on Tuesday night. I go to this. On Thursday night, I go to that. On Saturday, I visit my parents. On Sunday, I visit my in-laws. And when you look at it, very little of that time was, what do I want to achieve in my life? What is it going to take to do it? And what do I need to take out of the picture to allow me to put into the picture what I want? And COVID freed that up.
Right.
Because there was no, depending on where you lived, here we were pretty strong lockdowns for a lot of that 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, same.
So you weren't allowed to go visit your parents, right? Unless they were in your pod. Everyone had pods that cross-contaminated, made no sense to me. But and then you had the friends who didn't even follow the rules, but they were in your pod, and it was anyway.
What are you doing in my pod?
Right? So like we're all just contaminating each other. But what it did was it allowed it to be okay to say, well, no, I'm not going to make that 1 hour drive to visit you every Saturday, spend time just not talking meaningfully, and then spend that hour drive home and taking half a day. I'm going to use that half a day to read a book, go for a long walk with my dog, play some pickleball, hang out with my kids, and create some content for the week ahead. And now I'm building something, all because I freed up 5 hours on a Saturday that would have been used without intention 2 years earlier. And so, yes, that's where the podcast came from. I started to think, I've got all this time, I'm bored, and I'm planning to work really hard until 2027 and then stop and start something new from zero. But wouldn't it be better to start building now so that when I get there, I've got something already built? I'm just stepping from this to this. And I'm not having to take a step backwards to do it.
So my understanding, your 10-year journey took a little detour or pivot at COVID. We have the grand pause and the great opportunity to reset. Obviously, it shook the world, and we all had to kind of take a step back and look at our lives. And while one thing, it was this catastrophic event, and on the other hand, it was this opportunity to be able to look at what you're doing and re-examine your life. And is it the life and the path ahead that you want for yourself? So it seemed like it did it help? Would you say it helped kind of accelerate that 10-year vision that you had set out on prior to COVID?
Exponentially.
Yeah.
And I would say it probably cut 3 to 4 years off the journey. It's been incredible how quickly it's gone and the opportunities it's opened and the doors that are available and the paths that I can take. And that's just blown my mind is what is actually out there in this world and the different types of entrepreneurship that you can do when you start to build that following, when you start to build that network. Every X number of followers that we picked up, like let's say every 50,000, the conversations I was having with people ahead of me on the journey, people at my level on the journey, and how they were monetizing, it started to blow my mind. And I couldn't conceive of that a year earlier, sometimes 6 months earlier. And every level, I'll give you a simple example. Chatting with a buddy on Instagram. We're exchanging with each other cross-platform. Like we're friends, we like each other's content. So he lets me know when he does something on Twitter, I go check it out, hit it, and he does the same for me on Instagram. So we're chatting about monetization, and he is doing some marketing with some businesses, and he shares their content to his stories, and he's telling me rough numbers. And I just did the quick math, and I said, wait a second, are you making $500,000 a year just sharing people's content to your Instagram stories? He said, well, it's, like 430,000 roughly. Yeah. But I feel bad because like, I don't have a product. I don't do affiliate sales. I don't have an offer. Like, we all get caught up in what we don't have. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here saying, well, wait a second, like passively, just for pressing the little share button, you're making almost $500,000 a year. And a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have had no conception that these people, like, sure, I would have thought, okay, the Kardashians or Cristiano Ronaldo are making a lot of money from their brand sponsorships.
Right.
But I wouldn't have thought my buddy who's living in Florida in his early 20s is making $500,000 a year sharing content on his stories.
And that's with brand partnerships. I know our audience is going to be like, how?
Brand partnerships, networking, you or me saying, hey, I want to grow. Can you share my content?
Wow.
And he's like, yeah, sure. I'll share your content. Pops it to his stories.
Just because he has a lot of followers.
Just because, he's a great themed account that has a couple million followers.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So most of those themed accounts that were like, oh, like that's kind of a bit of a lame theme account. They're not that lame anymore, are they?
So it sounds like the early part of your entrepreneurship journey when you started the podcast, what I'm hearing is you kind of aligned yourself pretty early on with other folks that were in the content creation space and bouncing ideas off, masterminding a little bit. And so was that kind of a conscious thing that you thought about? Like, okay, I'm going to get into this. I'm going to start the pod. Let me make a list of all the people in my network that, could give me good feedback or I could bounce things off of. Was that a conscious thing? And talk about how that played a huge part of that first 6 to 12 months of your pod.
Absolutely conscious. So when you take a step back, a big part of anything you want to achieve in life, you have to know what you want. Then you have to understand what it takes. And then you have to actually do the work day in, day out consistently. When it comes to the plan, step 2, you look around and say, well, I have to learn from people who have done it. So the very first thing I did was take a course. And in taking that course, I started to engage with other like-minded people. And I started to grow slowly. I started to improve my account. And I started to identify those people who I was having conversations with, who I resonated with, and said, well, why don't we become kind of ride or die partners? Why don't we build together? And why don't we grow together? And so a person I'll give you as an example is Curtis Haney. And you guys would love to have Curtis on your pod. Curtis just quit his job. He now runs a fractional CFO business and is doing a bit of private equity investing. So he's been my ride or die buddy since the early days of Twitter. Like we both had under 1,000 followers and we found each other. We're both CFOs. We're both making this content journey. We both had podcasts.
When was this? What year?
This was August 2021.
Wow.
And so we took our first course.
For those audience who are doing the math, he's at 350K now. So that was 2021. So it's 2 years, 350K. Okay, got it.
Yeah, we hit January 2022 at 10,000, like right at year end.
Wow.
And then we hit April at 25,000. And then we started adding 20,000 a month every month. It got crazy.
That's so cool.
It was like we hit a pivot and we just exploded. So it goes slow until it goes fast. But what Curtis and I did along the way was we were each other's core. And what we kept doing was we would create a cohort. And at some point the cohort would start to die a little. And we'd be like, all right, let's build another one. And we'd go find people who were slightly ahead of us. I'm pretty introverted. So Curtis would be like, hey, here's the people I think we got to talk to. And he was really good at networking with everybody. And I'd be like, all right, okay, I'll try a cold reach out. But, like it was all about reaching out to people who were in the same sphere, same circle of content and saying, yo, I like your content, like what you're doing. Let's have a conversation. Let's chat. And you just start to get to know each other. And then you say, hey, let's jump on a Zoom. Have an in-person, face-to-face conversation. And then when it comes to, hey, how can we support each other on this journey? I could say, well, Jonathan, I'm putting together a group and we comment on each other's stuff when we drop it. We drop once a day each and we make sure we support each other because we're like this. We're having a conversation. We resonate with each other. Our content resonates with each other. We've already established that. So why don't we support each other on this journey? And then it's not transactional anymore. You've built that relationship and now you have a friend. Now you have because these aren't people we just engage with. Like some of them live in Vancouver. Stephen Timoney, if you see him on Twitter, Stephen and I go for walks with our dog. We hang out. Curtis, I've met in real life. Brian O'Connor, I've met in real life. Save Your Sons, who's a Twitter account, who's an absolutely phenomenal human being. I went and met him in Florida when he put on a sales conference.
I love that. Isn't that amazing how these connections happen?
Oh, it's a blast.
I want to lean into what you're saying a little bit because I think some of our audience might be hearing, all right, there's this Twitter/LinkedIn influencer, Clint. He's telling me about how he's expanding his social media presence, about how he's got this plan that was a 10-year plan. And he basically did a regroup during COVID and now it's going hyper speed. I want to lean into because I think the concepts you're talking about are applicable for every industry or for any aspiring entrepreneur who are thinking about doing something different because you kind of keep glancing over it. But I think it's such an important piece of strategy for life success and for life happiness is being thoughtful about what you want to be doing and what you want your life to look for. So can you go a little bit more micro for us on sort of how you planned out what your steps where you wanted to be and how you were going to get there? Can you talk through a little bit more micro on
for sure
on how that happened? Because I think a lot of our aspiring entrepreneurs want that 10-year goal and they're like, yeah, I want to be out of this corporate job or I want to have freedom. But they don't know how to get there and they don't really know what steps they need to do to bridge that gap because it just seems so overwhelming.
Yeah, here I'm even going to pull up on my computer the spreadsheet that I use to do it. So
I love it.
Part of what it comes down to is doing that work to know what you want, right? And so when I look at it, what I said was that I want to be able to live the life that aligns with my purpose and my values, right? So values and purpose are a big driver. And in the interesting one, I create a sheet like this and I use it as maybe an annual barometer, but I don't, because I've learned how to build that get shit done muscle. So I don't need to look at it every week. If you're just starting on your journey, look at something like this regularly. I maybe dig it out every year. But the interesting part is when I look at the core values, number one value for me is learning and growth. The first name of my podcast before I rebranded was The Pursuit of Learning. Now it's The Growth Guide. I didn't even think of that value when I created those two names.
It's just already lodged inside.
It's lodged inside the brain. And so almost everything on this list is actually happening. So what I did was I said, hey, what's my purpose? What do I want in life? I want to wake up and do what I love every day, when I want to and where I want to. I want personal and professional freedom. And I want to talk to people. You already heard me say it earlier about personal, professional, financial growth. I want to help other people have that life. And I want to help people achieve at the highest levels. So I want to be able to coach people to realize their dreams. And I looked at my values. I said learning and growth, integrity and honesty, creativity and ideation. So the writing, the content creation, consistent and disciplined, achievement and competition. Those are what drive me. And now I had to turn that in and say, okay, well, if this is the life I want, and if these are my values, how do I build in a way that does that? Okay, well, if I want to teach and I want to help other people grow, I want to write. I want to podcast. I want to public speak. The other thing those three things do is when you want to do coaching and consulting, and when you want to do private equity and real estate investing, because that's where the big money comes in financially, this can be okay, but these three aren't going to drive the big money. They might drive a little bit of cash flow, but these are going to drive the big acceleration in your net worth. But to do the coaching and consulting and the private equity and real estate investment, you need to build a brand. And so the next step that I did on this journey was for each of those categories, I had a mission 2028, eventually became mission 2025. And I said, for example, writing, what's my goal? This is what I want to achieve. What actions do I need to take to achieve that? What education requirements, if any, do I need? And I did that for the writing. I did that for the public speaking. I did that for the private equity. And I started to look at them all. And there was one commonality on all of them. I'd written the words, build your brand. And that was the epiphany that Doug talked about earlier with the Great Reset. When I sat there in 2020, because I launched the podcast April 2021, but I started recording in January, and I started thinking about it in November, October of 2020, was everything on this sheet says build your brand. Why am I going to wait till 2027 to start building my brand? I need to start building the brand today.
Well, Doug and I can vouch it's a slow build.
Right? It's a slow build.
Yeah.
Building the brand ain't easy.
Right? It's slow until it's fast. So if I have to build the brand, why don't I start building the brand now? And that was the podcast and social media. So that was the micro of taking each one. And I'll give you a quick example. Is when I looked at the goal of coaching and consulting, or coaching and teaching, I said the goal, top life coach in Canada, able to support my family through teaching and coaching. Actions to take, build the brand, writing, public speaking, TED Talk videos, podcast and YouTube videos, social media, Instagram and Twitter. All of those, except for the TED Talks, are pretty much happening. Right? So you have to know what you want. And then you have to have the plan. That's the plan. But the plan's useless if you don't act, right?
And I like the subsections. Yeah, you got to have the subsections. Here's the goal. Here's the things I have to do to reach that goal. All right, now what are the micro steps? What are the little pieces that I have to do? Education, like starting an account, all the subtasks. So I think it's so important that everyone understands most of these things don't happen by accident. This is a very planned out, thoughtful, and it takes a lot of self-discipline. And like you said, you maybe used to had to look at the list more often. Now that you've really built a routine around getting shit done, that it's more normal. But I know a lot of the people that I talk to that are aspiring entrepreneurs are still building that muscle of trying to I'm going to be doing things all the time. What's on my to-do list? What's the most important thing? I have to do that first. That's a muscle that you have to build until that becomes part of your routine. And that's something personally that I built and lost, and now I'm rebuilding. Through COVID, it was kind of like almost like time off for me to just spend a lot of time with my children and really savor and build those relationships. And now I'm trying to build that muscle back, because you do lose it. It does atrophy when you don't use it. So now I'm in that process. So if you can talk directly to our entrepreneurs who are unhappy in what they're doing, what would the thing that you would say, like, this is the most important first step?
Yeah. And what I always worry about with a lot of entrepreneurs is they constantly hear, well, you gotta just like, if you're unhappy, leave your job and start your business. It's like, whoa. Like, wait a minute.
Here comes the anti-guru again.
Right?
I like it.
There's
yes.
a time and a place for that. And I always contrast these two. You've got the Viking approach, and I call it the Spiderman approach. And the Viking approach is like, we're burning the boats at the beaches and we're storming ahead and we're going to take this city or we're going to die. And it's like, well, that's okay. Sure. That's great for,
It works with some significant risk. I think the people need to recognize.
With some significant risk. And if you're, you just said COVID was a time for your young family. Well, maybe that's not the time to burn the boats at the beach when you have 2 kids under 5, your partner's on mat leave or paternity leave, and you're working a 9 to 5. Maybe that's not the right time to burn the boats at the beach.
Which is most people's situation. Yeah,
it's a lot of people.
They
right?
have, if you have some responsibilities.
So what's the Spiderman approach? The Spiderman approach is what you're watching me do every day, and that is, I'm just firing out webs. Like
there, I was waiting for the visual. And now.
And I'm not letting go of anything until I'm firmly attached to a bunch of things. So you're staying in your 9 to 5, and you're taking care of your responsibilities. You're earning your salary, and you're doing a good job. You're not quiet quitting. And you're recognizing you've got to build something for you because you're unhappy there. So you're doing what you need to do to stay employed and make some money and cover your responsibilities. You're not, that's not your future. So you're not doing the above and beyond. You're not working a lot of overtime. You're not killing yourself to be unhappy. You're doing what you need to do to get paid, take care of your family and your responsibilities. And then you're kicking into overdrive and you're saying, now I'm going to work at night or in the mornings and on the weekends because there's a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to build what makes me happy. I'm going to build a path out. I'm going to learn the skills I need to learn. I'm going to take the courses I need to take. I'm going to have the conversations with the people I need to take to get into the area of my world that I want to get into. So if I want to start a podcast, I'm going to reach out to 4 or 5 other podcasters. I'm going to have conversations. I'm going to seek to understand how they started. What equipment did they get? What books did they read? What conversations did they have? What do I need to know when I start? And I'm going to build a plan. Step 1 is, if you really take it back to step 1 is, well, what do I want to do? Because if I'm unhappy here, where am I going to be happy? And when you know that, then you start to do what we're talking about. You start to build the plan to go from here, where you're unhappy, to go from here, where you're flourishing and you're saying, I love every minute of every day.
Yeah, I love that point. A lot of our audience is young, either in college or out of college. And they're like, well, I don't even really know what I want to do yet. So I like that you have these 2 things that you're balancing. You're still working your job and you're learning as much as possible, because potentially the network you're building from that and the skills you're building from that will help out with whatever you want to do in the future. But you're also kind of balancing that with, what can I be doing to figure out what I want to do if I don't know? Because a lot of people just really, I don't like where I'm at, but I don't really know where I want to be. So you have to start asking those questions of yourself to help make it clearer. But you can't just ask it when you're frustrated at work. I like that you're having a very thoughtful approach. I'm going to document this. I'm going to put it into a spreadsheet. I'm going to put it into a Google Doc, whatever people's process is. But I think taking notes and sort of building out a full document, this is what I always recommend. So you can look back and what was my mindset last week when I was doing this, and where am I now? And where can I go with this? To really help you build out where you want to go to. And one of the things I was thinking while you were talking is, the YouTube comments. I was just seeing them pop up in my head as you were talking. I don't have any time, Clint. Where's all this time you keep talking about, all this free time? I'm working. I have a family. Where are you getting all this fucking time, Clint? So can we talk, about the hidden hours or to that comment specifically about where do you get these incremental pieces to really take these steps? Because a lot of people just feel like maybe I don't have that time.
COVID really showed us how much time we do have. I think we can all agree on that. When you take out all the bullshit, all of a sudden you're like, wow, I actually have a ton of time that I didn't even know about. So let's think about that. And I shared one of the favorite quotes that really was an epiphany and a mindset shift for me yesterday on a Twitter space. And one woman tweeted it out and said, wow, like this really hit home. And I go back to, I heard Matt Fraser on a podcast. And for those who are listening and saying, well, who's Matt Fraser? 5-time CrossFit Games champion. Couple CrossFit Games before that, he was on the podium, but didn't win. And while he was on the podium, he was a student in university, double majoring in business and engineering. Business degree, pretty hard. Engineering degree, really hard. Doing both of them while you train to be in the CrossFit Games and get onto the podium. We can all agree that's a little bit harder than what most of us are doing in our day-to-day lives. So when they said, hey, Matt, for someone who asks you, like, how do you do that? He said, it's simple. It isn't easy, but it's really, really simple. You take everything in your life that doesn't contribute to those goals and you cut it the fuck out.
Yeah. Simple.
I like that. I like
hard
that.
To do, but
hard
simple.
to do. But that's where it is. That's where the time comes.
And I hope everyone caught the difference between easy and simple. It's not, yeah, I love that designation. That's super important. Cut it the fuck out.
I use that line for everything in life. Almost everything in life is simple. Almost none of it's easy. It's simple to get a 6-pack.
Right.
Eat less, exercise more, and do some ab work.
It ain't easy.
We could all do it.
Yeah.
But it's not easy, right?
I wonder if people, as you're saying that, as you're telling that story, I wonder if in their heads, because what was happening to me, immediately what was popping in my head is the things I know that are not adding to my future betterment that I spend time on each day. Because I was talking to Doug about this, over the last few weeks. It's like, I really don't spend a ton of time on Instagram, but when I do, I know it's always just wasted time. Really, I'm not really, improving anything. It's really just like toilet time or just like time when my kids are in between doing different things. And it's just like, I've cut that out and started working on some of the stuff I know that I really want to get better at. I want to, learn Spanish before we travel at the end of the year. I want to get, more working on the pod, more work on development with my nonprofit. It's like, man, that's so much extra time I could be working on those things.
Yes.
I wonder if that's what's popping in people's heads when you said that. Like, oh, there's a few things I really don't need to do that are not really improving anything. And that's free time that I could be using.
We all have them, right? We all have those.
Yeah. Takes me back to it's not what you do during the 9 to 5. It's what you do during 5 to 9. And finding that time after hours to educate yourself and learn what you need to learn to do what you want to do. And then a big thing that, has been a consistent theme with our successful entrepreneurs on this show has been starting with the end in mind. And I think a lot of people don't do it. That's another thing that's simple, but a lot of people just want to get busy out there, start doing things, but they haven't sat down and thought, what do I really want 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or even in a year from now? So looking again at your like hockey stick meteoric rise with your social media following, I know we kind of covered a lot of that, but you mentioned one thing that I wanted to get back to quickly, which is you said that you would meet with your little cohort and you guys would figure some things out, kick around some new ideas, and then you made a pivot. Was there like a pivot moment where you guys tried something different? And you're like, whoa. And then now all of a sudden you're skyrocketing. Is that how it went for you?
Yes, there always is. And the challenge is you have to take advantage of them while they're there because the arbitrage kills them. And that's the thing with arbitrage, right? Arbitrage is only there and it's only available for a period of time. Before I dive into some examples of that, I really want to emphasize, Doug, what you said. Stephen Covey, Begin with the End in Mind, is the reason I recommend that is the number one book every human should read. Begin with the End in Mind changed my life. Absolutely, fundamentally changed my life. Everything we talk about boils down to begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. And then what I do on that spreadsheet, and Jonathan, this is the reason I don't have to look at it regularly because I have that end in mind. And it can be a 5 or a 10 year goal. I break it down by year. What do I need to do every year to get there? For those years, now I break it down by quarter. What do I need to do by quarter to hit the yearly goal? And then I break those quarters all the way down into habits. What are those things I need to do daily that will allow me to hit my weekly goals? The weeks become months, the months become quarters, the quarters becomes years, and I hit a 10-year goal. And that all comes down to, okay, on a daily basis, I need to write, I need to read, I need to engage with people, I need to, whatever those things are, what are those things I need to do every day that will allow me to achieve at the highest levels 10 years from now? And so Doug nailed it. We really need people to understand that core concept of beginning with the end in mind and breaking it down to their daily activities. What are some of those pivot moments? So for example, on Instagram, people would be blowing up when they were doing reels. And so you jump in and you start producing reels. And then reels get killed, and it's these things. It's the little animated videos with you talking in the background. Oh, wait, those aren't doing well anymore. It's this thing. And so what you're really doing there is you're actually learning how the system works. So the pivot or the epiphany isn't what's big at the moment. The epiphany is I need to learn the movements and the flow in the algorithm. And I need to understand how I can take what's in my mind and what's in my head, and I can apply it to whatever is hot at the moment. And so the very first one for us, Doug, that really did that was Threads. So on Twitter, Threads, for those who don't know, it's a series of tweets that tell a story, 13 ways to achieve financial freedom. And then we have 13 tweets, and each tweet talks about a core concept on achieving financial freedom. And when I learned how to write the threads, that drove exponential growth. And then the good part about those threads is each thread is made up of those tweets. And if you're doing it right, each of those tweets should be able to be a standalone tweet on its own, which means if you look at Tiago Forte, who writes about building your second brain, he talks about a concept of information packets. And so these large pieces of content are driven off of all these information packets, which are the individual tweets. So now, a month later, when I want to write a long form content about 13 financial rules you should know, 4 of those were in that past thread on 13 steps to financial freedom. So I don't have to rewrite it all from scratch. I can grab those 4, I can move them over, and I can put them in the new thread, because I have, at this point now, if I've written 200 threads and each of them has 10 tweets, and all of those tweets could be standalone tweets or information packets, now I have 2,000 information packets that I can move around into different threads about different things and repurpose.
Yeah.
And now each one of those tweets can become a 60-second reel for a YouTube short, an Instagram story, or a TikTok video.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're doing now. And that's what the virtual assistant or our new team member who's joining the team, that's one of the things they'll help take over from my wife is, let's take every single piece of content we create and hit 3, 4, 5 platforms in multiple different dimensions and angles. But the message behind it all has to be that same message that, and I love what my friend Brad Stolberg said. It's the 3 legs of the stool. 1, it's time tested. Like, this has been around since the Stoics or the Buddhists or the Romans. So it's stood the test of time. 2, it's science backed. Generally, you want to see some evidence that what you're talking about works. That's why I like talking about cognitive behavioral therapy. It's one of the best things for people as an intervention. And then the third thing is you have to be able to implement it in your life. You actually have to be able to take what we're going to talk about and implement it and have it add value. So Brad talks about those as the 3 legs of his stool. And any book he writes, he mentions those. And I try to make sure that my writing, to me, stands those 3 legs of the stool.
I love that. What great advice for life. I want to get in real quick here. What one of the questions we ask every entrepreneur is, how would you personally define entrepreneurship?
For me, what it looks like is you're taking a bet on yourself that you could add value to the world in a way that's different than is being done now. And that can even be, I'm going to start my own real estate development shop, and I'm going to deliver homes in this manner. Now, That's not new. We don't have, I always say I'm not smart enough to create a new app or platform that does X, Y, or Z or sends rockets to Jupiter. Like that's not going to be me, but I can understand how to build homes, how to build a team to do that as well or better than anybody. And I've worked in enough shops that I can take what this shop or that shop and what they've done really well. And I can build my own shop that's going to do that as well or better than the shops that I've already been in.
I like that. Make your own variation.
Make your own variation. But you have to be willing to bet on yourself, and you have to be willing to step out from the shelter, because to some extent, that's what our 9-to-5 is. It shelters us from that risk. And so for you both who are on an entrepreneurial journey, what a lot of the listeners miss who aren't there yet is they see the glitz, they see the glam. They don't see the sleepless nights early on when you're not cash flowing. They don't see the fear when you sign your first personal guarantee for a loan. Like, wait a second, I'm not just going to lose this $250,000 I'm putting into the project. I may actually lose my home that I've built over the last 15 years of my career. Holy shit, this is real now.
Yeah.
Right? And we don't talk about that, right? Like, do you guys see many people?
We try to. We try to highlight that stuff here on the podcast. All the people that come on are so successful. A lot of times we get caught up in talking about all the successes and all that kind of thing. But we do try to highlight, the difficult and scary and just the real of what happens when you pull back that curtain on, especially when you're getting started.
Yeah. And when you're getting started, I think an important thing to highlight for people, and I don't talk about this part as much on my creator journey, but no one believed in my creator journey. Like friends, family, loved ones, like early on in your entrepreneurial journey, whether it's starting a business or whether it's a creator journey, you don't have a lot of people who are waving the pom-poms and cheering you on. Most people are like, what are you doing?
A lot of skeptics. What
are you doing, clowno? Like, this isn't going to work. Like, you're an idiot.
Are you nuts?
Yeah, exactly. and for me, that was over a year. So I know one of the things you guys ask a lot of people is like, what was the hardest part for you on this journey? And it was definitely that. I have an amazing supportive partner, and it's very important to have that. She secured a lot of the time that I have to do this. So I recognize that's not the same for everybody, but she shares the journey. So she says, well, if you want to be successful, I'll do X or Y. I'll take care of the house and the kids in this way and to free up your time. But that said, a year and a half into the journey, like last August, I was dying. I was physically, mentally burnt out and exhausted. I had just started to make some money, just started. And I don't want to say I was ready to throw in the towel, but like I was ready to just take a long nap. If someone was like, if you won $100 million today, what would you do? My answer was like, I'd sleep for a week. I would just like get in bed and sleep. And so we were driving together, and I had just gotten a raise at my 9-to-5, which is still one of the reasons I love 9-to-5s. And it was a significant one. We'd been negotiating a bit of a package for a number of years. And it was significant enough that it covered off her salary. And I said to her, it just popped into my head while we were driving, I think you should quit your job. And I had just made a little bit of money in social media. The first person reached out for a media sponsorship deal, and I had just gotten that raise. I said, you're not happy doing what you're doing. To your point earlier, right? You're not happy in your 9-to-5. I'm burnt out. I'm dying over here. Like, why don't, my kids were in the back seat. We were driving on a family vacation down to Seattle.
Yeah.
And it just said, like, I think it's better for all of us. Like, everyone in this car would be better if you're not working. You'll have more time for the boys. You'll have more, you'll be able to support me.
Sounds like this turned into a good vacation.
Yeah. And she thought about it. And a month later, she joined the team. So it was, that was life-changing. But for the people that are listening and they want to take this journey, the other side is so full of rewards. The other side is so beautiful. And it's not easy to get there. It's a road. And I love that you two highlight it. It's a road that is difficultly traveled. And you need to know that going in, that there's going to be some challenges. And that's why I'm willing to say, as Jonathan says, as the anti-guru, for a vast majority of people, the 9 to 5 is one, it's great for you. Two, like if you find a 9 to 5 that you love, and your lifestyle then at work and outside of work is great, well, then that's for you. That's great. And I support you in that. And if you decide you want to be an entrepreneur because that's you and that's what you need to do to be happy, then you need to listen to these two guys who are going to share the wins and the challenges that you're going to get along the way.
And the way that you just said that was so eloquent, because that's something that that Doug and I kind of get when people talk to us about the podcast sometimes, like, oh, you guys are just telling everyone to go, follow their dreams, to go find their own freedom. And we always have to kind of like do a real quick pause and just say, what we're trying to do is for the people that are unhappy in their current situation or are looking for something more, then we're trying to help them provide a roadmap to get to where they can find their own freedom or to get there easier path than we did and that a lot of our entrepreneur friends have done. But we totally agree with you. And I think it's so nice that you said it that way, is whatever you do it to make yourself happy. And if you're happy with where you are, then that is exactly what we support. And that is what everyone should be striving for. So I love that you said that. And I super appreciate, Clint. I just want to say, I appreciate you sharing your story, because there's so many different paths to freedom and yours is so unique. You're a CFO now, you're still working your 9 to 5 CFO job while you're becoming this, amazing creator and influencer. I don't even know if you call yourself that, but I think it's a really cool balance that you have with that, leading towards the dreams that you planned out that you want to reach and achieve. And I love that you're already a little ahead of schedule. And I think that, Doug and I can both say, like, man, just like the way that you've planned things out, it's a real inspiration for people to just take a reflective look at their own lives to see, where do I want to be and how can I get there?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And you hit something earlier that I want to emphasize as well. You talked about the idea of why build the brand and how does that help? And whether someone who's listening is in a 9 to 5 and wants to stay there, they're in a 9 to 5 and want to become an entrepreneur, or they are an entrepreneur. Building their brand and using social media as a creator, not a consumer, is so powerful for a number of reasons. One, it can become your resume. Two, it gives you access to a network that you otherwise wouldn't have. Three, it allows you to, let's say you're a business, it gives you access to deal flow that you wouldn't have access to. And then the last one I'd throw at you is it gets you access to people that can join your team and help you grow your business that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. So I'm not doing the content creation to be necessarily, to your point, an influencer. I have a much bigger, broader vision, and it's going to tie into those 4 things and access to people, capital, and deal flow. And so you'll learn more in the coming years, but it's all about access to those things.
We're so excited to see what you do in these coming years, Clint, because we know it's going to be huge.
Thanks,
I mean,
Doug.
how could it not? You're halfway into your 10 years and looks like you're going to get there early. So, and then you're going to have to create a whole new 10-year plan. So that's very exciting. And I think that's inspirational for people to hear how they can do it in their own lives, those listening, and start with the end in mind. I love how you broke it down today, Clint. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It was great talking to you guys. It was really enjoyable.
Clint, people are going to want to reach out to you. Where should we send them?
The best 2 spots are at thegrowth.guide. And then the second one is I'm on Twitter and generally respond to all my DMs. I am Clint Murphy.
Awesome. I love that. Clint, thanks so much for your time. And thanks so much for sharing your story. This was really an awesome talk.
Thanks, gents. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Clint.
Being an entrepreneur is hard. That's why we created findyourfreedompod.com to compile all the resources you need to find your own freedom.